You're listening to episode 4 of the Insurance Industry Insights podcast with M. Colonella of Generali and Paul Hewitt of DXC Luxoft.
Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of the Insurance Industry Insights podcast. Delighted to be joined by two new guests, Paul Hewitt, who's the Global Head of Data and AI Practice at DXC Luxoft, and M. Colonella, who's the Innovation Lead at Generali. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. And I'm going to start with a introduction icebreaker. And Em, if you could go first, how would you explain what you do first to a 10-year-old and then to an insurance professional, perhaps maybe somebody you're encouraging to join your team?
Thanks, Joel. Nice for having me here. It's an interesting question and one I've never had before, actually. Insurance companies. So I work for an insurance company, and what insurance companies do, they are for-profit organizations, but they also serve a social purpose, which is securing and maintaining the stability of our economical environment. And this could be in your personal lives, or it could be in the business sector. But basically, the main objective of the insurance company is to make people whole whenever something bad happens. And I think it's very, very important for, again, stability of our economic system. I work in the innovation space, so we look at everything which is the newest and latest, greatest opportunities to help societies, to be better protected against new risks.
Amazing. Thank you very much. And how would you explain it to somebody? Maybe you're encouraging somebody to join your team, or you're pitching for more funding within the organization. How would you introduce the innovation practice at Generali to appear?
The reason why someone will have to join, an innovation team in insurance, I think, is really around what I've just said. There is so much to be done in the space. We live in societies that evolve so rapidly. So do the risks that come with the rapid evolution of the world. So innovation in insurance is really being at the forefront of all of that, and it's about looking for what are the new interesting trends and technologies that can help with risk protection, which I think, again, is super exciting if you think of the social purpose of insurers.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Em. And over to you, Paul. How would you explain what you do to first the theoretical 10-year-old and then to a peer in the industry?
I work for a company called DXC, and DXC is a large global organization involved with IT services. And what that basically means, everything these days runs on computers and on IT. And DXC does everything all the way from running and maintaining the actual computers themselves, the hardware, the servers, and so forth, to running the immediate software that sits on top of those servers, the operating systems and the applications and the like, through to business applications. We write some of them and we support others and integrate others, and eventually also making sure that we solve clients' problems within the business space. So of all the different business areas that we look at, and we span a pretty big cross-section of all of them, insurance is one of the most important ones for us, and that's why we're here today together with Generali, and very pleased to be here to discuss these topics today.
Thank you very much. So Em, back to you, and this is maybe an unfair question, but if you imagine you have a magic wand and you can solve any problem, time is no issue, money is no issue, you could solve anything. It could be at work, it could be the industry as a whole. What would you change?
It's a fascinating question, and there's so much in the world that should be fixed. So I would rather keep it topical and look at the industry. So one problem I see is, this is basic behavioral economics. Every company is trying to optimize their own organization, trying to do innovation, trying to make their processes more efficient, which is great, but we are missing a bit on optimizing the ecosystem as a whole. Just let me give you one simple example, but there are probably many more. The one around sanction checking. So today everyone is obliged by law to do checks about not doing business with sanctioned entities, just to keep it simple. And every single company in the value chain of insurance does the same checks over and over again. And everyone, has adopted the best tools, has made the process as efficient as possible. But, overall, they're doing the same checks over and over again. So locally optimized as a system, massively, not optimal. So I think there is a lot along those lines of ecosystem plays. How will you, go beyond game theory and get people together to solve these ecosystem issues beyond your specific local optimization? I think that's something I would love to tackle.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Paul. Any reflections on what M would change, and any ideas of your own if you were given that magical power?
I guess from my point of view, our focus as a whole for DXC is using data and AI to solve problems, typically for our clients, but generally we're all part of society, so we are trying to solve many things as a consequence of the problems that we solve for clients. So overall, I guess we see data and AI very much as a force for good. And a force that helps society and helps people go forward. So the thing that we are primarily trying to do is make data and AI and machine learning more accessible to a wider range of problems, and make sure that there's more usage of the techniques that's possible for people. And there are a number of different consequences for that. So, for example, we're always interested in algorithms that are more efficient, so they use less power. We're always interested in things that are safe and responsible. There's a lot of misuses that you can put AI to, and there's a lot of potential traps and pitfalls along the way. So a lot of what we also want to do and try to do is make sure that it's responsible and that it's correct and that it does what it says on the tin. So there shouldn't be any surprises when you do stuff. And it should all help in a smooth and seamless way move us all forward and solve the problems that we're looking for. And I guess as we go along today, we'll talk about some of those specific problems in the insurance space. But, in a nutshell, I guess, it's helping people solve problems in an efficient and responsible way. And today we're here to talk about some of those in insurance.
Amazing. Thank you very much. Now, in preparation for this, given M's role leading innovation, I thought I would take some time to actually understand how innovation is conducted formally at leading organizations. So I did a bit of research, and I'm sure this will be old news for many of our listeners, but it's certainly new learning for me. McKinsey has a model by which they describe innovation called the 3 Horizons model. Briefly looks at 3 future horizons. Number 1 would be ideas that are continuous innovation to an existing business model and a core capability. It's very short term and essential. Horizon 2 would be ideas that extend an existing business model and take them to new customers, new markets or targets. And then Horizon 3 is the creation of entirely new capabilities, new businesses, new models to take advantage of or to respond to disruptive opportunities or to counter disruption. And McKinsey asserted that each of those horizons requires a different focus, different management tools and goals. Now, it's been asserted in the Harvard Business Review that the model does not always hold, in the sense that sometimes those disruptive Horizon 3 ideas can be delivered as fast as ideas for Horizon 1. Examples cited include Airbnb, Uber, SpaceX, Tesla, very rapid use of existing technologies deployed in short periods of time. So, which is a very long-winded way of getting to the question, which is, when you're thinking about innovation at your companies, how do you measure, monitor, and alert your team, the executives at the business, investors, customers, to the progress of innovation and the possible accelerations that can be applied using disruptive technologies? And that's an unfair question. It's very long, but maybe if I throw that to Em first.
No, absolutely. I mean, we use the same framework where we try and build our portfolio of innovation. Just a note of caution. The horizon is just a framework, and the way I think about this is it's a map, can help you understand where you are, and then you can decide where you want to go. As such, it's just an approximation of reality. And despite these critiques, yeah, it's true, the world has changed and the pace of innovation has accelerated. That's absolutely true. But I think the concept of the horizon still stands. And what you want to do is build a good mix of Horizon 1, Horizon 2, and Horizon 3 innovation. And probably, most of your innovation should still be in the Horizon 1, which is the most natural, is, short-term, delivering immediate returns. That's also the natural focus of organizations. What you don't have to forget is, your future also depends on looking at the long-term stuff. So you still need to have a bucket of, bold Horizon 3 innovations. How you measure it, how you make your senior managers aware, I think it's the other way around. I mean, you can, try and teach people what is innovation and, why it is important, but it's more, they need to have the sensitivity and they need to have, believe in the fact that research is vital for, securing your future as an organization. So it's more who has that vision, who understands it, is where you see innovative companies, where you see innovation happening within big corporates. I'm lucky enough to work for a company which has innovation as one of the key pillars of the strategy. So it comes from the top, and then it's incentivized at all levels of the company. In terms of the point of this article you were referring to about the speed, yeah, it is true. Things move much faster nowadays. And also Horizon 3 comes with the famous innovator's dilemma, where Horizon 3 might be looking at stuff that might disrupt your core business. So you still need to invest in it, but you need to invest in it properly. And that means having the right people tackling those problems, but also you want to do it outside of your organization. You want to isolate it, make it mature until you're ready, to embed that into your core business. Otherwise, if you try and do it from within, you will just get corporate antibodies rejecting it all. So it must be done to be sustainable in the long term. It must be done in the proper way through right people and probably on the side of your organization.
Intriguing. Thank you, Em. Paul, how would you reflect on that?
I think many of those things I would echo, and it's certainly true that the Horizon 1 stuff is where most of the emphasis sits, just because that delivers usually pretty immediate business value. But the Horizon 2 and the Horizon 3 stuff is also important, and it just changes in a sense the way that you look at the problems and what it is that you're doing. So the Horizon 1 very much sits inside current business and current practices, and it's taking new things and making sure that people are trained up on them, and making sure that if there's something that if there are two things that you could put together, sometimes one and one makes three. If there are things that you can put together in a way that introduces a vastly enhanced capability, well, we'll do it. And it's quite easy usually to measure the returns. You spend X amount of money, and here's a well-defined benefit, and yes, we can achieve it, or no, we can't. But it's a pretty clear decision. Here's what you can do. So it's quite binary. The decision making for Horizon 2 is a little bit more fluffy, right? Because you're looking at expanding new things into new markets, new models, and inherently that's a little bit less precise. You're basically saying, well, we think that if we expand the following product into Asia Pacific region, we think there'll be a demand, and we'll make more money. So therefore we're going to spend X amount, and we're going to hope for Y return. So it's a little bit less certain, and your payoff is not quite as well defined. But nonetheless, potentially it's a bigger payoff than Horizon 1. And then similarly going out to Horizon 3, the amount of payoff there is quite different, because oftentimes you'll be trying maybe 5 or 6 different things, and of those, one will work. But that one potentially has got the ability to make you a lot more money. I think, for example, quantum computing these days, it's pretty much been a Horizon 3 thing up until now, and arguably it still is a Horizon 3 thing, because there are certain problems inside quantum computing that are still preventing the scale out much more broadly. But Horizon 3, it's slowly becoming more certain, and in a sense it's going to transition down to Horizon 2. But how do you make sure that you keep adequate focus on that? As Em was saying, it really needs to be part of the corporate strategy. We're going to spend X amount on disruptive technologies. And how do you measure progress? Well, you also look for things like patents. How many patents have you applied for? How much IP do you own? How much are you spending, generally speaking, on innovation across the organization, and so forth? So you can keep a fairly good control on it, but it only really makes sense to look at it at a corporate scale, because if only 1 in 5 is going to succeed or only 1 in 10 is going to succeed, if you looked at it from the business unit point of view, it looks like a failure because you've spent some money, no return. But if you look at it at the corporate level, you're spending a certain amount of money, and because you're going to get the 1 in 5 or the 1 in 10, some of those will pay off and you'll get the long-term returns that you need. So it is important to have a central corporate strategy for Horizon 3 innovation. And we do see situations where things happen much more quickly. ChatGPT and GenAI and large language models, I think, is an example of that. I mean, 2 years ago, it was a nice sort of idea. It's still quite abstract. And now, in a very short time span, everybody's talking about it. Everybody's using it. There are queries about it every day. It's expanding so fast even now. So there are situations where Horizon 3 transitions down to Horizon 1 in remarkably short spaces of time. So, it's like the old saying goes, the exception always proves the rule. So I think it is a useful model to look at, but it also has many, many exceptions to it, especially for high value stuff.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, both of you. And Paul, you touched on quantum computing there. We'll definitely come on to that and data more broadly. But I'm curious, both of you there are talking almost in terms of investment decisions, the moonshot versus the small optimization. So just staying briefly on that same economic topic, how do you win funding for your business in this context? If it's relatively difficult to make a business case with an explicit payoff, with well-defined risks, how do you go about convincing people inside or outside of your organizations to fund projects and programs that you're responsible for?
I think Paul said it well. I mean, it starts from having a solid corporate strategy. It is proven, to work. If you have the right people and the right processes, it will generate returns in the long term. So you need to have that long-term vision and that strategy to do the investments up front, to reap the benefits later on. So comes with having the top management pushing for it. I think there is no escape from that.
Very good. And Paul?
I think Em's quite correct. It's really important to have the buy-in from the top. And I guess when we face the problem quite often, right, because we have to motivate, we have to put business cases together for proofs of concept and accelerators. And, everyone's very focused on cost these days always. So to spend money, you've got to have a good reason to spend the money. So for the Horizon 1 stuff, as we were discussing earlier, it's usually pretty simple to put the business case together. Horizon 2 as well. Horizon 3, usually what we say is the benefits are going to be in 1 or 2 different areas. So the first area is the long-term strategy one. 3 years' time we'll make money out of this, but that's usually a little bit harder to sell internally because, people's horizons often are, they are extended to the 5-year point, but they are often also just focused on the current financial year. So, what do you do that gives you benefit in the current financial years as well as the 5-year point? So the 1-year horizon is usually satisfied by looking at the marketing and related sorts of aspects. So in other words, it's not just that you want to be saying, we'll do the same sort of commoditized things that we've done all the time. So we'll help people with the following projects, and it follows the same cookie cutter mold as it has before. And those are, let's say, the business as usual types of things that we've got. But you also want to be able to say, we are doing stuff that is going to progress the state of the art. And the reason that it provides business value is it keeps people interested and motivated, makes a little bit of a splash out in the market. People look at it and they're interested. They follow the links. They look at what's going on. And maybe you don't necessarily sell a quantum computing idea, but the fact that people are looking at you and they're associating the ideas of innovation and disruption with you, that's a good thing. And that encourages business just generally across the board. So we tend to focus on those sorts of angles. It upskills everybody. It keeps everybody at the forefront. And then also from a branding and marketing point of view, it associates you not just in the minds of potential new employees, but in the minds of the market with new and innovative stuff. And that's really what adds to the overall brand. That's kind of how we look at it and why we try and make sure that we maintain a good edge on innovation and disruption.
It's also a matter of attracting talent. It's been demonstrated that innovative companies attract the best people, especially the younger generations. They want they're driven by working for companies that can make positive impact and working for companies that are innovative. So it's also essential from that point of view of attracting talents.
Very good, thank you. If I could hand to you, how would you describe the current status of quantum computing and the contribution it is making or it could make to Generali specifically and the sector more broadly?
It is a fascinating technology and one which is evolving very rapidly. The simple way to think about it, and I'm a simple guy, so this is the way I think about it, is a new way of representing information, a much richer way to represent information, and a much better way to run some calculations. And it's been demonstrated that for some specific classes of problems, quantum computing will give an exponential increase of your capacity and your speed of calculating and getting to solutions. Now, the trick there is, specific problems. So we are never going to get a quantum computer on our desk running Windows. I mean, quantum computers will be only used to solve very specific classes of problems. And those roughly fit into a few categories. There's the optimization problems. Could be, for example, in the insurance space, optimizing a portfolio of stocks. You, as an insurer, are investing in the stock market, and you might want to maximize the return on that. That's a classical problem that has been proven quantum computing can address. There could be, simulation problems, simulating even nature and protein folding, or how molecules can be, affect and interact as another big area. And more recently, there's been a lot of research around the machine learning application of quantum computers. So, big promise, evolving rapidly, not here just yet. But there are a couple of benefits of starting looking at quantum computing. So the first one is some of the problems you will try and solve using quantum computing on quantum-inspired algorithms, which are algorithms which use the same kind of logic, but you can still run on classical computers. So doing that can help you find new ways to solve problems you were not able to look at before. But there is also a lot in the emerging from the research itself. We don't know exactly when a quantum computer will become available, but the research getting there is getting everyone a lot of benefits and learnings that you can also apply in other areas. So massive impact, certain classes of problems only, and the hardware which is able to give you that advantage is not just here yet, but it's still worth investing because you get the benefits from looking at problems you didn't look for a long time and get some quick wins there, but also benefit from the research. When you think of insurance, again, the area of portfolio optimization is one of the most obvious one and what we experimented with. So is around looking at your portfolio of stocks and how you maybe look at how they are correlated and how you optimize based on those correlations. This is something we have been looking at. And it was partially run on quantum computers, partially run on It was partially run on quantum computers, partially run on classical machines using quantum-inspired algorithms. And it's just a small use case, but it will prove that it was giving us some advantage. And nice little experiment that we ran recently, and we are planning to continue and investigate in the space because, again, the promise is there. It's not so much a matter of if, it's more a matter of when. So it's better to stay on top of things and be ready.
Thank you very much. And Paul, from your perspective as the practice lead at DXC, I expect you're seeing a wide range of developments in this field across the industry. How do you think that's going?
I think broadly speaking, it's very much as Emma has said. There's a lot of interest and there's a lot of recognition of the possibilities for it. And I think in many ways the algorithms are somewhat ahead of the hardware at the moment. So a qubit, everyone talks about qubits with respect to quantum computing and how many qubits are there at the moment. And the number of qubits is increasing, but it's not yet high enough to make a substantial amount of difference. And then also within quantum computing, the hardware and the machines themselves still have a lot of noise inside the machine. And that also limits the algorithms to a fair degree. So there's a lot of work going on increasing the number of qubits, decreasing the amount of noise inside the systems, and just getting to a point where the hardware is good enough to run the algorithms. So in terms of the algorithms that are available, there are a bunch that are reasonably well known and have been around for a while. So for example, one of the things people were concerned about early in the early days of quantum computing was cryptography, because there's certain algorithms that cryptography relies on, which quantum algorithms can crack much more quickly than conventional algorithms. So one of the early concerns was, is the internet going to break? Because all of a sudden, all the existing cryptography methods can be broken by a sufficiently powerful quantum computer. So that's one example of an algorithm that was developed quite a long time ago now, but still the hardware to this day does not yet exist to make that particular algorithm implementable or usable at anything like a scale that would encourage cracking of current cryptography. So that's one example. Other examples, we are, like M, also looking at different ways to price assets in financial services. So as M was saying, one of those is looking at portfolio optimization and stocks and the like. Another one is also looking at many algorithms to price existing financial instruments are quite lengthy and quite compute intensive. And there are new methods coming out that speed that up quite a lot, at least in theory. And even for those methods, we're still waiting for sufficiently powerful quantum hardware to come along and make those implementable. We do think that it is coming, and I think another interesting bunch of people to look at is the venture capital investors and the people doing early stage technology investments. And there seems to be more of a conviction these days that point is coming relatively soon. And one thing to mention, just as a concept or an idea, is what you sometimes see people talking about is what they call quantum supremacy. So quantum supremacy, it's a bit of a sort of a fuzzy hand-waving notion, but quantum supremacy occurs when quantum computers can run existing algorithms faster, noticeably faster or materially faster than existing ones. So Google did demonstrate quantum supremacy for one particular quite mathematical problem. So that, partially that box has been ticked, but realistically that box will only be ticked when a real world problem can be solved faster than on a quantum machine, faster than on let's say a mainframe or a high performance GPU type of cluster. So I think the point is coming closer. So quantum supremacy is coming closer, but we're still not quite there yet. But there's been a bunch of really good work done across the board on the algorithms needed to solve those particular problems.
Thank you both. It sounds like there's a huge amount of potential and some big challenges to be overcome. I suppose one of the things that we're all having to bear in mind working in this sector is that it's a regulated space. And I'm curious then about the tension or the interplay between innovation, move fast, break things, and maintaining those legal and regulatory obligations, particularly when you take that into the context of the global context, where different regions will have different views legally and culturally about data privacy and data governance. So from your perspective, and looking across the industry, what's your view of how innovation works in this regulated environment compared to perhaps less regulated ones? And I'll hand that to M first of all.
That's a super tricky question. I think no one has the right or wrong answer. I can give you my view of the world. Depends on what we're talking about, what kind of technologies we're talking about as well. And the first one comes to mind, everyone is talking about is AI. I have this intuition that, AI is super powerful. It's going to change the way we work. It's going to change our societies. It's going to bring a lot of benefits. Comes with a lot of dangers. And I think finding good balance and, between let everyone roam free and, regulating in this specific space is absolutely necessary. Because it's a powerful technology and, we made mistakes in the past. Think of, social media, all the issues we had at some point with, disinformation and, impacts on younger generations. Just, different environment, completely different setup, but, you don't want to see that kind of big societal problems emerge. So between, the US being, at the forefront and doing stuff, and then, China being, wild, very open about, really using data, and maybe also copying from other countries. I think the US take a good stance there in terms of fair amount of regulation, making it fair, making sure its use is ethical. Might slow down innovation a bit, but in this specific case where technology is so powerful, also possibly dangerous, I think it's the best approach.
Thank you. So possibly dangerous, very powerful. Paul, what's your opinion?
Yeah, I think I'd agree broadly with all of those, and just to add, I think from a regulatory and legal point of view, with new technologies, there are two main, for us anyway, categories of legal, regulatory, and ethical challenges that need to be overcome. Or need to be looked at rather. So the first is to look at how the new technology fits into existing legislative frameworks. So for example, if you look at AI does a whole lot of things and does them really powerfully, but one of the things that AI impacts on is things like copyright and intellectual property and so forth. And there's been a lot of discussion about that in the media, as there should be, and a lot of lawsuits ongoing at the moment for various different reasons. But fundamentally, if you're talking about, let's say George R.R. Martin starting a lawsuit because Game of Thrones has been replicated through some of the chatbots, that is an extension of existing legislation. So there's already copyright legislation and licensing legislation, and there's a push to extend legislation to cover copyright infringements by AI and to extend it to license infringements via AI, and to make sure that data privacy is not breached by AI. So you're extending existing legislation to cover the eventualities introduced by the new technology. So that's one type of innovation that occurs, and you'll see quite a lot of it, for example, in the EU AI Act. So the EU AI Act does a good job of tying regulation of a new technology, AI, back to existing legislation that already exists in a lot of different areas. So that's one sort of box. The other more interesting box, perhaps, is to look at problems that AI introduces that are entirely new and have never been encountered before. And for me, one of the big examples, especially in this particular year, is wholesale influence of populations. Right, so what happens if you've got a technology that can influence the entire electoral base one way or the other? What do you do about that? How do you make sure that you're not being spammed with 1,000 chatbots from outside your country that influences your country's election? And how do you make sure that people are not spreading malicious information via automated AI means and methods? So the challenge here is to introduce legislation that covers an entirely new class of problem that we've never really had to encounter before, and to try and mitigate some of the impacts of that. And then there are other sort of societal implications as well. There's a lot of debate at the moment about whether or not AI is a polarizing sort of environment within society. It creates echo chambers potentially. People only hear and see the things that they want to hear and see, or are comfortable for them to hear and see. And so you get people, to the extent they deviate from the norm, they don't have an exactly center political view. The AI helps push you further out to the extremes, possibly. That's the debate, And if it does, is there something you need to do about it or not? So those are the sorts of new types of challenges that the regulators are grappling with. And what do you do about them? I mean, I think the election interference one, there's some obvious answers, and people will look for ways to try and mitigate those. But for the polarizing argument, A, is it a problem? And B, if it is a problem, what do you do about it? So there's still quite a lot of debate about some of these things. So broadly speaking, two types of initiatives that go on in this sort of space. The one is to tie the new technology to the existing legislation, and the second is to see if there are any entirely new things that we need to take care of.
That's fascinating. Thank you. It sounds like then, whether it is adapting legislation or adapting entire societies to the impact of this technology, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, which makes me think about the next generation. So if we're looking out 10 to 20 years when a new generation is coming into the workforce, what skills do you think need to be taught, trained up for in schools, in business schools and universities to help machine intelligence, AI, and perhaps quantum computing be effectively and successfully applied in the world of work and in our societies more broadly?
No one has a crystal ball, so it's always hard to predict the future. Clearly, there are some trends which are easy to spot. Again, thinking of AI specifically, but also quantum computing, the way we work is going to change. There will be many jobs which might no longer be relevant. And it's not just white collar jobs, some blue collar jobs. If you think, combining AI with robotics, also some blue collar jobs might be not as relevant. That means we will have to train for all sorts of new jobs. That comes with being more flexible. I mean, changing job from time to time will become more and more common. So focus on continuous learning is key. And in terms of the skills, some say, oh, the AI is going to do all the coding for us. Yes, but someone has to build the AI to do that coding, right? So I think maths skill, engineering skills, if you think of quantum computing, where, there's massive engineering challenges to be solved, those will still remain very, very relevant. At the same time, probably some of the most human aspects of the intellect, I think, are going to play a much bigger role. And I'm thinking of, creativity, critical thinking, emotional intelligence. Those skills will become more and more relevant and will complement more and more the technical skills I mentioned just a couple of seconds ago.
Yeah, and I also am violently in agreement with many of those things, right? So it's almost impossible to say we must do, X and Y and Z, because we don't know. It's going to change. So what can we do? I mean, the only things we can do is try and equip the younger generations or the new people coming through with just the fundamental skills that are necessary. So, maths and science, just general critical thinking and general broad-based technical skills are really, really useful. And I think the other point that Em raised there is really very relevant. Emotional intelligence, EQ types of skills, and those sorts of things, I think is super important. And part of the reason that I say that is if you think about AI and what AI can do, if you ask people sort of 10 years ago, or actually, no, maybe that's the wrong time scale, let's say 50 years ago. If you ask people 50 years ago, what's going to happen, right? How are robots and AI going to impact you in the everyday world? And if you look back in, 50 years ago, people thought that there'd be robots that that could walk around quite smoothly and easily, that they could move quite easily, right? But when they spoke, they would speak in a funny robotic voice that you couldn't really understand. And they got it completely wrong, right? They thought that the voice was hard, and they thought that walking was easy. And it's because of the way that we built as humans. We move really easily, right? We think moving is easy, but actually moving is super hard for an AI to do. It is a much harder problem than it looks. And similarly, differential equations. If you'd asked people 50 years ago, are computers going to do maths? And they would say, oh no, solving a DE, that's really difficult. That'll be one of the last things computers do. But no, it's not. It was one of the very, very first things that they do much better than we can. So there are many human things, like just simply moving, or like having emotional intelligence, having sort of general purpose critical thinking. Those things that to us are fairly easy, they're part of being human, and they're at the top of what makes us human. Those things are the difficult areas and the areas where AI will intrude last. Many of the other things come earlier. So it's important for us to focus on those skills, I think, that will persist for the longest, and focus on the areas where we will still make a difference. So the nature of the jobs is going to change. It's not going to be in the ways that we necessarily expect, but the important thing is to have the general skills to stay on top of it all.
Brilliant. On that bombshell, thank you both so much for joining and sharing your insights into what we could be looking forward to, or maybe be slightly concerned about in the future of innovation, from quantum computing to AI, of course. Thank you so much for both of your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining and listening to this conversation. This will be posted up on LinkedIn and other social channels, so do feel free to get involved, ask questions in the comments. I'm sure Em and Paul will be happy to respond there if you'd like to get involved in that conversation. So thank you so much for listening to this episode. Goodbye.